Everybody, I'm Gwendolyn Sterk of Sterk Family Law, and I have the honor and privilege to be with my friend Joyce Kelley today. She's an independent advisor representative with Global View Capital Advisors. Welcome, Joyce.
Well, I am so glad to be here, Gwendolyn. I'm so glad that you invited me to be here to share some vital information with you and your guest.
Well, thanks so much. Today I really want to talk about long-term insurance. This pandemic certainly has brought about a lot of issues to a lot of people saying, hey, it's time to deal with life, right? We have to prepare, we have to do some pre-planning. So a lot of people are saying, okay, where do I start? And one of the first questions is, what is long-term care? Can you explain that to us?
Yes. Long-term care is defined as a range of healthcare services that are required for personal or healthcare needs for an extended period of time for individuals with chronic illness or a disability, and they are not able to fully execute the activities of daily living.
Got it. So if you find yourself in that position, are there other alternatives, such as, if, for example, if you're on Medicare, would there be some Medicare benefits that would, provide for this, or do you really have to have long-term?
That is such a wonderful question, and one that people are very much confused about. Okay, so long-term care is exactly what it says. It is long-term care for chronic illness. Now, Medicare, on the other hand, here's what it does do. It covers skilled care with a maximum of 100-day coverage period. But here are the requirements, and this is where sometimes people miss it. You must have a minimum of a 3-day hospital stay. Then you must go to a nursing home directly from the hospital. Now, the copay, the first 20 days under Medicare are fully paid. But then after that, the copay all the way up to 100, the 100th day, is paid by you, the payor. And here's the catch. Medicare must believe that you are deemed to be rehabilitative. And what that means is you're going to get better. And that is totally different from long-term care. So generally speaking, Medicare does not pay or cover long-term care. Medicare is designed to pay for a short-term acute illness.
Okay, I do have a question. You were talking about they pay for 20 days, and then you can be there up to 80 days, and then you'd be responsible for the other 20%. But wouldn't your supplemental, if you had a supplemental insurance to Medicare, that would cover it, correct?
It will cover it, but it may not cover it all.
Okay.
As a rule, Medicare pays only 2% of all skilled nursing care expenses. So that does leave possibly a lot for the patient to pay for.
And if you leave the facility and you go back to the emergency room or whatever, you're still going to have to be hospitalized 3 days before you can return, right? There's all these rules.
Yes.
And it becomes very difficult. I know that, we had that experience when my mom took a fall and we had to go back and forth, and, we were getting to the end of time and we had not used her long-term yet. So I did have a question. Are long-term benefits paid only to third-party providers?
The answer is no to that, because basically there are 3 types of long-term care policies. And I'm going to explain each of the different kinds. So one is reimbursement. So if you have a long-term care policy that is of the reimbursement type, what's going to happen is that third-party provider is going to pay for the actual expenses. They will send a check. Okay. Now, that is the least expensive of all of the long-term care policies because it's the least flexible. And they're going to pay exactly what the cost is. The second type is the indemnity type. Now, with the indemnity type, in your policy, you have already decided how much you want daily or how much you want monthly for your benefits. So with the indemnity type, whatever that amount is, as long as you have one covered long-term care event, they're going to send you that check. They're going to send it to you.
Got it.
So once you pay that expense, if there's something left over, you are able to use it for some other non-care type of things. Maybe you need a wheelchair or something like that. So it offers more flexibility. Then, of course, there is the cash type of policy, which gives you the most flexibility, but it is the highest in cost because you don't have to prove anything as far as coverage goes. You get the cash, you do with it whatever you want. But it is the most expensive type of LTC policy.
But if you're going to get a cash policy, you still have to prove that you're not able to perform the essentials of daily living.
Well, you could see that's the first step anyway,
right,
to prove that you, and which is going to be another thing that we're going to talk about, what those activities of daily living are. So if you can't, you've got to prove that you can't fully execute those even before any kind of benefit kicks in.
Got it. Now, are there long-term benefits that you can have in addition to home health care, or how does that interplay?
Okay, would you repeat that question?
Sure. Let me rephrase it. Can you have home health care really with long-term insurance?
Yes, you can. In fact, studies have shown that patients want home health care over all other kinds of health care. So that is the primary way that they want it. They want to be at home. So yes, your long-term care policy can include home health care.
Now, can you also get that home health care from Medicare though? So for example, Medicare wants to send a nurse or a physical therapist to your house. You can do that in addition to using your benefits?
Well, now remember, Medicare is going to send you directly from the hospital to the nursing home because the hospital believes that you still need skilled care.
Got it.
Skilled care, and that's what Medicare will pay for. Home health care with home health care aides are not considered skilled care.
Got it. And so you're out of pocket for that yourself?
Unless you have, yeah.
Right,
yes.
Unless you use some of the money you might have from your long-term, right?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Yeah, unless you use some of the money from your long-term. So if you have cash from long-term, you could use it for home health care.
Or even, yeah, and if you have the indemnity type, okay. But your healthcare policy itself may include some home health care if it's still falling within the rehabilitative category.
Got it.
Now you know, it may be helpful for some people to know about Medicaid.
Okay, tell us about that.
So Medicaid will cover long-term care, but here's the rub. Medicaid, you can't even qualify or be eligible for Medicaid unless you spend down your assets to about a little over $4,000. And many long-term care facilities don't even really want Medicaid patients, so you're going to be very, very limited. However, for those who have to go that route, it is available, but again, you've got to spend down your assets for it to be classified as a long-term care event. You've got to be unable to do 2 out of the adult activities of daily living. But if that's where you are, that's where you are, but it's going to be very limited in where you can go.
Sure. And then in Illinois, also on that spend down provision, they allow you to keep a certain dollar amount in a residence as well, which is somewhat controversial and very complex. So if you get in that situation where you need to do a spend down or do some kind of planning for that, you really should consult with an attorney about that because it can be very tricky.
Yes.
Very interesting exclusions. And another topic probably for a whole setting there.
Right.
Can I ask you the question then, are there any restrictions? Let's say you have a cash policy that if you meet the requirements, you get $5,000 a month. If you want to use it to pay your mortgage, to pay for caregivers, to pay for utilities. You can do a combination of things. Is that correct?
Well, with the cash policy, it requires no proof of care. So it could pay for any type of care,
Right.
including care from family and friends.
Right.
Or the dollars could be used to offset lost income,
Right.
or other needs an individual might have.
Right. So that would be perhaps maybe be an example. So
Yes.
tell us, what's the qualifiers? And you said you were going to get to this topic.
Yes.
What does it mean? What are these qualifiers in order to get the benefits in the first place?
Okay, so the qualifiers are this: you must be unable to fully execute only two out of 6 activities of daily living. And the acronym for that, acronym is what the word I was saying.
Right.
Acronym for that would be ADL. So the 6 are when you need assistance with eating, bathing, or dressing. Then the other 3 would be being able to transfer to or from a bed or chair. If you need care with your toiletry needs, or if you need assistance with incontinence. Those are the 6 activities of daily living.
And you need 2 out of the 6 in order to get the benefits.
Yes, you must be unable to execute 2 of the 6.
And how do you certify that? Through your doctor, or in what means?
Yes, you must have a doctor verify that you are unable to do these.
Now, there's been some real questions lately as to whether or not a life insurance, certain types of life insurance, might be an alternative for long-term insurance. Can you address that?
Well, basically the answer is no, but then I'm going to say more about it. There are some life insurance policies that offer a long-term care rider. Now that could be a very good alternative, but what happens is if you must use some of your death benefit, because that is what you would be using for a long-term care event, then of course that is going to decrease your death benefit. But if you're okay with that, that's fine, because you could have other policies, so that could work for you. Now, you have to understand that there are 2 kinds of life insurance policy. So there's term insurance. Now, term insurance is exactly what it says. It's for a term. Normally it's 15, 20, or 30 years. But after that time, that policy expires. It is no longer of use to you. So no, you cannot use a term policy for long-term care. Then there's the permanent policy, which offers lifetime coverage. Now, with most permanent policies, you do accumulate cash value. So over time, your cash value builds up. Now, it is possible to take a loan against that policy, possibly for a long-term care event. However, if you don't pay it back, then it's going to decrease your death benefit amount.
Got it. And how much or at what point in time, let me ask a different question, should you be applying for these long-term care policies?
Well, actually, it's like all life insurance, disability insurance. The younger you are, the cheaper it is. The older you are, more medical things kind of come in, and it is going to cost you more. So some 40-year-olds need long-term care. Look at your family history. Is there something in your family history that indicates that you just might need to plan for a long-term care event? So there is no age. There is no age. I mean, look at COVID-19. We are now learning it is affecting all ages. And now there's a big emphasis on that millennial group that is contacting COVID-19. Well, we don't know what the results, the after effect results down the line will be from COVID-19. So I would say, you know, if you want to prepare for a what if, even though that what if may be down the line somewhere, then certainly look at purchasing some long-term care insurance that will fit your budget and meet your need.
I have another question. What if you wanted to get a policy, but it's not as large? Could you increase it later or just get a second policy as well?
Well, you probably could get a second policy. That's something that may be individual to different long-term care companies, so that when you start having that conversation and looking at the various companies that are providing long-term care, that certainly can be an area that an advisor like myself could do some research for you on to see if that what if situation occurs, what can we do?
Okay. And one other question, let's say that I'm 50 hypothetically, and I want to purchase a policy, but I live to be 90. Is that policy going to end at a shorter period of time, or as long as I pay the premiums, is this going to remain in place?
Yeah, as long as you pay the premium, because none of us really know when we might have a long-term care event.
Right.
However, if you get it at 50 as opposed to 60, you're saving some costs.
Got it. And you sell this, and what do you do with a client? Let's say that they're interested, somebody's listening today and saying, listen, it's time for me to look at long-term care. What are the next steps that they would need to take?
Well, the first step would be to give me a call. Let's have that conversation. It can be through a Zoom meeting. Right. You can come into my office as long as you have on a mask and we observe the social distancing, you're fine. Or we can have a conference call. So whatever way suits the client, that's fine. And I would like to offer your listeners a special brochure put out by the Genworth Life Insurance Company on how to have that long-term care conversation with aging parents. It is very valuable. It talks about what you do talk about, but also what you don't talk about.
Very interesting, right?
Yeah, so I think this would be a very valuable piece of information. So anyone who calls me to get more information, I can send this booklet to you, and it's called Let's Talk.
That's great, because that's the problem. Is, you know, we're talking about it in the sense of maybe 40, 50, 60-year-olds getting the policy, but there is a whole slew of us out there that have aging parents, and we've got that responsibility. They may have never gotten long-term. It may be available. It may not be. And really dealing with that going forward is a new day. Wouldn't you agree?
I would. The best thing about long-term care is planning, planning, planning. And now what we're emphasizing with people who are getting ready to retire is to place a long-term care plan within your retirement planning plans. Because you're working with your income and how to keep your income aligned with the number of years you may be in retirement, which could be up to 30 years. So that way you can put that in place while you're putting some other things in place. And let me also remind your listeners that men and women who are married, studies have shown that women outlive men. And so the chances of the wife becoming the caregiver to her husband are very real. And if the wife has a long-term care event later in life, who will be her caregiver?
That's right.
So often, some think, oh, my children will take care of me. But we know our children are living across the United States in different places. Do you really want them to pick up their roots, their employment, and come to take care of you? Some may want to, but some may not be able to. Right. So a long-term care policy gives your family members a peace of mind. And for single women out there, I strongly recommend a long-term care policy in place, particularly if you don't have children, because for the most part, we're looking at long-term care benefits being claimed when you are up there in age,
Sure.
primarily.
Right.
And so just to have peace of mind, I would strongly recommend getting it, but getting one that will fit your need as far as budget, because they can be expensive. But now with so many baby boomers out there, these insurance companies are really trying to make long-term care something that we seriously think about and don't just say no to it because of cost alone.
Got it. Well, you know, you can look at the cost of long-term, but you also have to look at the cost of what nursing home care or any kind of skilled care facility or even home care is going to cost. All of it has a cost.
Absolutely, absolutely. You are so right. So I would love to have that conversation with any of your listeners, or if your listeners know someone else who needs to hear the information, they can contact you and you will provide that with them. And let's start the conversation now, because if you're in the midst of a long-term care event, then the planning part is over, accepting what you're going to do immediately.
Very good. Now, Joyce, how would people get directly a hold of you if they didn't want to go through our office? Why don't you provide a phone number and then they can just call you?
Okay. Should I place it in the chat box and say it verbally?
We'll put it, if you can say it verbally, we'll put it at the end as well, but it certainly can be a conversation starter.
Okay. So my email address is J as in Joyce, Kelley, Kelley, at G as in George, V as in Victor, C as in Charles, A as in Albert, P as in Paul, online.com.
All right. The phone number?
The phone number is 708-428-6315.
And if they contact you, there's no cost for that, correct? They can contact you, consult with you, and figure out what their plan is.
Yes, that is complimentary. And if someone would like to come into the office, the address is 15255 South 94th Avenue here in Orland Park, Illinois.
That's absolutely perfect. Well, if you're listening today, I will tell you from life experience myself, as well as from dealing with clients of all ages, that this long-term care policy is not something that should be taken lightly. It needs to be considered and it needs to be addressed sooner rather than later. So Joyce, we really appreciate that you were able to share this information on long-term care, and we hope that people reach out to you to get this valuable information as well as your brochure.
And one last saying, November is Long-Term Care Awareness Month.
Oh,
so
very interesting.
Yes. To have that conversation.
Perfect time. Well, thank you so much for your valuable time today and for sharing with everybody that's listening the information today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.